Help us reach 1,000 subscribers on our new channel Lesbian Stories. We hope you enjoy the story. Shit. Another rejection. I slammed my laptop shut, the sting of failure burning in my chest. As CEO of Technova, I'd led us to the brink of a breakthrough, or so I thought. Now, with funds drying up faster than a puddle in the Honolulu sun, I was desperate for a miracle. I needed air. Grabbing Buddy's leash, I headed to the local dog park. My loyal Labrador bounded ahead, his tail wagging with carefree abandon. If only life were that simple. The park was quieter than usual, probably due to the sweltering summer heat. I wiped sweat from my brow, envying Buddy's enthusiasm as he raced towards a sleek black poodle. "Artemis, heel!" A melodic voice rang out, stopping me in my tracks. I looked up to see a vision in a crisp white sundress, her raven hair cascading over bronzed shoulders. Our eyes met, and I felt a jolt of something. Recognition? Attraction? Impossible. I wasn't into women, was I? "I'm so sorry," she said, approaching with a dazzling smile. "Artemis gets excitable around new friends." I waved dismissively, trying to ignore the flutter in my stomach. "No worries, Buddy's the same way." She extended a perfectly manicured hand. "I'm Vivian Chen." "Maria Sanchez," I replied, hoping she couldn't feel the electricity crackling between our palms. We chatted as our dogs played, and I found myself hanging on her every word. Vivian was a venture capitalist, brilliant and accomplished. When she mentioned her interest in tech startups, my ears perked up. "Actually," I ventured, "I run a tech company myself, Technova. We're working on some exciting AI applications, but..." I trailed off, not wanting to appear desperate. Vivian's eyes sparkled with interest. "Technova? I've heard whispers about your work. Why don't we set up a meeting to discuss it further?" My heart raced. Was this the miracle I'd been hoping for? As we exchanged contact information, our fingers brushed, sending a shiver down my spine. What the hell was happening to me? That night, I tossed and turned, unable to shake thoughts of Vivian from my mind. Her captivating green eyes, the way her dress hugged her curves. "Stop it, Maria," I chastised myself. "You're straight, remember?" But as sleep finally claimed me, my dreams were filled with soft lips and gentle caresses. The next morning, I threw myself into preparation for our meeting. I pored over financial reports, practiced my pitch until I could recite it in my sleep, anything to distract myself from the confusing feelings swirling in my chest. When Vivian walked into my office 2 days later, I nearly swallowed my tongue. She wore a tailored charcoal suit that accentuated her lithe figure, exuding confidence and power. I suddenly felt self-conscious in my own navy blazer and pencil skirt. "Maria," she purred, "it's wonderful to see you again." Was it my imagination, or did her gaze linger a moment too long? I cleared my throat, willing my voice to remain steady. "Likewise, Vivian, shall we get started?" As I launched into my presentation, I found myself hyper-aware of Vivian's presence. The way she leaned forward, hanging on my every word. The slight furrow of her brow as she considered complex data points. The unconscious way she bit her lower lip in concentration. Halfway through, disaster struck. My laptop froze, cutting off my carefully prepared slides. "Damn it," I muttered, frantically trying to reboot the system. Vivian's hand on my arm stopped me cold. "It's okay, Maria. Why don't you just talk to me? Tell me your vision." I looked up, meeting her gaze. In that moment, something shifted. The rehearsed pitch fell away, replaced by raw passion for my work. I spoke from the heart, painting a picture of a future transformed by our technology. When I finished, silence hung in the air. Had I blown it? Then Vivian smiled, and my world tilted on its axis. "I'm impressed, Maria, very impressed. I think this could be the start of a beautiful partnership." The way she said partnership sent a thrill through me. As we shook hands to seal the deal, I couldn't help but wonder, what exactly had I gotten myself into? The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, strategy sessions, and late-night brainstorming. Vivian had wasted no time integrating herself into Technova's operations, and I found myself both exhilarated and unnerved by her presence. "We need to pivot," Vivian declared one evening, pacing my office like a caged panther. "The market's shifting. If we don't adapt, we'll be left behind." I bristled, defensive of the company I'd built from the ground up. "We can't just abandon our core product." "Who said anything about abandoning it?" Vivian's eyes flashed, and I felt that familiar jolt in my stomach. We're enhancing it, Maria, making it irresistible. As she outlined her vision, I couldn't help but be swept up in her enthusiasm. Vivian had a way of making the impossible seem not just possible, but inevitable. When she spoke, you believed. Okay, I conceded, trying to ignore how my pulse quickened when she flashed me a victorious smile. Let's do it. We worked late into the night, hunched over my desk, poring over market analyses and product specs. As the hours ticked by, I became increasingly aware of Vivian's proximity. The scent of her perfume, something exotic and spicy, filled my nostrils. Every accidental brush of her arm against mine sent electricity crackling through my body. Earth to Maria, Vivian teased, waving a hand in front of my face. Where'd you go just now? I blinked, realizing I'd been staring at her lips. Shit. Sorry, I mumbled, heat rising to my cheeks, just lost in thought. Vivian's expression softened, and she reached out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear. The gentle touch nearly undid me. You work too hard, she murmured. We should call it a night. As we gathered our things to leave, an awkward tension hung in the air. I found myself wishing she would stay, terrified of what that might mean. Dinner tomorrow? Vivian suggested casually. To celebrate our new direction. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As I watched her saunter out of my office, hips swaying hypnotically, I knew I was in deep trouble. The next evening found us at an upscale restaurant overlooking Waikiki Beach. Vivian wore a slinky red dress that left little to the imagination, and I struggled to keep my eyes and thoughts appropriate. To new beginnings, Vivian toasted, clinking her glass against mine. The candlelight danced in her eyes, and I found myself mesmerized. As we ate, our conversation drifted from business to more personal topics. Vivian regaled me with stories of her globe-trotting youth, her coming-out journey, her past relationships. I hung on every word, equal parts fascinated and envious of her self-assuredness. What about you, Maria? She asked, leaning in conspiratorially. Any torrid affairs in your past? I laughed nervously, taking a large swig of wine. Hardly. Just a string of failed relationships with emotionally unavailable men. Vivian's eyebrow arched. Men exclusively? My cheeks burned. I've never really considered alternatives, I admitted. Never? Vivian's voice dropped to a husky whisper. Not even now? Before I could formulate a response, the waiter appeared with dessert. I'd never been so grateful for an interruption in my life. As we savored the decadent chocolate cake, I felt Vivian's foot brush against my calf under the table. My breath caught in my throat. Was it an accident? But then it happened again, a deliberate caress that sent shivers up my spine. I met Vivian's gaze over the rim of my wine glass. The heat in her eyes made my mouth go dry. What the hell was I doing? This was my investor, for Christ's sake. I couldn't be entertaining these thoughts. But as the evening wore on, I found it increasingly difficult to remember why this was a bad idea. Vivian's laugh was intoxicating, her touch electric. By the time we stumbled out of the restaurant, pleasantly buzzed from wine and each other's company, I was teetering on the edge of something dangerous and exhilarating. Come back to my place, Vivian murmured, her lips brushing my ear. Nightcap? Every fiber of my being screamed yes, but a last shred of self-preservation held me back. I can't, I stammered. Early meeting tomorrow. Disappointment flashed across Vivian's face, quickly masked by understanding. Of course, she said smoothly. Another time, perhaps. As I watched her cab pull away, I let out a shaky breath. What the hell was happening to me? I'd never been attracted to a woman before. But with Vivian, all bets were off. That night, I tossed and turned, haunted by visions of red dresses and knowing smiles. When sleep finally claimed me, my dreams were filled with soft skin and passionate kisses. I woke gasping, my body humming with unfulfilled desire. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, determined to bury myself in work and forget about my confusing feelings. But as soon as Vivian walked in, looking fresh and put together despite our late night, all my resolve crumbled. Good morning, Maria, she said, her voice a silky caress. Sleep well? I swallowed hard, remembering my vivid dreams. Like a baby, I lied. As we dove into our day, I tried to maintain a professional distance. But every shared glance, Every accidental touch sent sparks flying. By lunchtime, I was a bundle of nerves, hyper-aware of Vivian's every movement. This couldn't go on. I had to get a grip, had to remember what was at stake. Technova was my baby, my life's work. I couldn't risk it all for, what? A fleeting attraction? An identity crisis? But as I watched Vivian command a room full of investors, her passion and brilliance on full display, I knew it was already too late. I was falling hard and fast into uncharted territory. And God help me, I didn't want it to stop. The boardroom was silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I sat at the head of the table, my hands clenched tightly in my lap to hide their trembling. Across from me, the stern faces of Technova's board of directors stared back, their disappointment palpable. "I'm sorry, Maria," Thomas, the chairman, finally broke the silence. "But we feel it's in the company's best interest to reassign you." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Reassign?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. "We're demoting you from CEO," he clarified, not quite meeting my eyes. "Effective immediately." The room spun around me as they outlined their reasons: poor leadership decisions, lack of direction, failure to meet projected growth targets. Each point was a dagger to my heart, shredding the confidence I'd spent years building. As I stumbled out of the boardroom, my mind reeled. How had it come to this? I'd poured my blood, sweat, and tears into Technova. It was my baby, my vision. And now? I barely made it to my office before the tears started falling. Collapsing into my chair, I let out a strangled sob. Everything I'd worked for, gone in an instant. A soft knock at the door made me hastily wipe my eyes. "Come in," I called, trying to keep my voice steady. Vivian slipped inside, her face etched with concern. "I heard what happened," she said softly. "Maria, I'm so sorry." Something in her gentle tone broke the last of my resolve. Fresh tears spilled down my cheeks as Vivian crossed the room, gathering me into her arms without hesitation. "Shh, it's okay," she murmured, stroking my hair. "Let it out." I clung to her, burying my face in the crook of her neck. She smelled of sandalwood and comfort, and I found myself melting into her embrace. When my sobs finally subsided, I pulled back slightly, suddenly aware of our intimate position. "God, I'm sorry," I sniffled, embarrassed. "I got makeup all over your blouse." Vivian chuckled, her breath warm against my ear. "I think I'll survive," she teased gently. Then more seriously, "Maria, look at me." I raised my eyes to meet hers, struck by the intensity I found there. "This isn't the end," she said firmly. "It's a setback, yes, but you're too brilliant, too driven to let this stop you. We'll figure it out together, okay?" Her unwavering faith in me was overwhelming. Before I could second-guess myself, I leaned in and pressed my lips to hers. For a heart-stopping moment, Vivian froze. Then, with a soft moan, she melted into the kiss. Her lips were impossibly soft, tasting of mint and possibility. My hands found their way into her silky hair as the kiss deepened, years of pent-up longing and confusion pouring out in a rush of passion. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, I saw my own mix of desire and uncertainty reflected in Vivian's eyes. "Wow," she whispered, a slow smile spreading across her face. "That was a mistake," I blurted, panic rising in my chest. "Oh God, Vivian, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. I'm not." Vivian silenced me with a gentle finger to my lips. "Maria," she said softly, "breathe, it's okay." But it wasn't okay. My world was crumbling around me, my career in shambles, my sexuality in question. I pulled away, wrapping my arms around myself. "I think I need to be alone," I mumbled. Hurt flashed in Vivian's eyes, but she nodded. "Of course. But Maria, when you're ready to talk, I'm here." As the door closed behind her, I slumped back into my chair, my head spinning. What the hell had I done? The next few days passed in a blur. I threw myself into damage control, meeting with clients and investors to reassure them about Technova's future. But my heart wasn't in it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vivian's face, felt the ghost of her lips on mine. I avoided her as much as possible, making excuses to skip meetings or ducking out of rooms when she entered. It was childish, I knew, but I couldn't face her. Couldn't face the feelings she stirred in me. It all came to a head late one night at the office. I was burning the midnight oil, drowning my sorrows in spreadsheets, when a knock startled me from my reverie. Vivian stood in the doorway, determination etched on her face. "Enough," she said firmly. "We need to talk." I opened my mouth to protest, but the words died on my lips. She was right. We couldn't go on like this. Vivian perched on the edge of my desk, her proximity making my pulse race. "Maria," she began, her voice gentle but insistent. "What happened the other day? We can't ignore it." I stared at my hands, unable to meet her gaze. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I was emotional, vulnerable. It was a mistake." "Was it?" Vivian challenged. She reached out, tilting my chin up to force me to look at her. "Because it didn't feel like a mistake to me." The intensity in her eyes took my breath away. "I don't know what I'm feeling," I admitted. "I've never been attracted to a woman before. I don't know if I'm gay or bi or just Vivian sexual." I let out a shaky laugh. Vivian's lips quirked into a smile. "Vivian sexual, huh? I kind of liked the sound of that." Before I could respond, she leaned in and kissed me. This time, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. Just a pure electric connection that set every nerve ending alight. When we finally came up for air, I felt dizzy with want. "Wow," I breathed. Vivian grinned. "Still think it was a mistake?" I shook my head, a giddy laugh bubbling up from my chest. "No," I admitted, "but Vivian, I have no idea what I'm doing with any of this." She took my hand, intertwining our fingers. "That's okay," she said softly. "We'll figure it out together. One step at a time." As I gazed into her eyes, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. My career might be in shambles, my world turned upside down, but with Vivian by my side, maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. The Honolulu sun filtered through my bedroom curtains, casting a warm glow across rumpled sheets. I blinked awake, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar weight draped across my waist. Then the events of the past week came rushing back, and a smile tugged at my lips. Vivian stirred beside me, her raven hair splayed across my pillow. "Morning," she mumbled, nuzzling into my neck. "Morning," I replied, my voice husky with sleep and something else. Desire, maybe, or fear. Probably both. It had been a week since that kiss in my office, a week of stolen moments and heated glances. We'd agreed to take things slow, to figure out what this thing between us meant. But last night, slow had gone out the window. I closed my eyes, remembering the way Vivian's hands had explored my body with reverent curiosity, the soft gasp she'd made when I'd tentatively cupped her breast, the exquisite torture of her lips trailing down my stomach, lower and lower until... "Penny for your thoughts?" Vivian's amused voice snapped me back to the present. She propped herself up on one elbow, a knowing smirk playing on her lips. Heat flooded my cheeks. "Just processing," I admitted. Concern flickered in Vivian's eyes. "Any regrets?" I considered the question carefully. Was I freaking out? Absolutely. But regrets? I shook my head. "No regrets," I said softly. "Just a lot of questions." Vivian's expression softened. She leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to my lips. "Ask away," she murmured. And so, tangled in sheets that still smelled of passion, we talked. I poured out my fears and confusion, my excitement and trepidation. Vivian listened patiently, offering reassurance and understanding. "It's okay to be scared," she said, tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. "Coming out, even to yourself, is a big deal. There's no rush, no timeline you have to follow." I nodded, grateful for her patience. I've always seen myself a certain way, straight, conventional. And now you're realizing there's more to you than you thought, Vivian finished. "It's beautiful, Maria, embracing all parts of yourself." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss that started soft but quickly blazed into something more. As Vivian's hands began to wander, stoking the embers of last night's passion, I let myself get lost in the sensations. For now, at least, questions could wait. Later, over coffee and room service pancakes, reality began to creep back in. "What happens when we leave this room?" I asked, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at me. "At the office?" Vivian reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "We'll be professional," she assured me. "What happens between us doesn't change our working relationship." I wanted to believe her, but doubt niggled at the back of my mind. How could we go back to business as usual when everything had changed? The answer, as it turned out, was, we couldn't. Walking into Technova that Monday felt like entering a minefield. Every glance, every casual touch from Vivian sent electricity crackling through my body. I fumbled through meetings, distracted by memories of her lips on my skin, her fingers tracing paths of fire. Maria, did you hear the question? I snapped back to attention, mortified to find the entire board staring at me expectantly. I'm sorry, I stammered. Could you repeat that? As Thomas repeated his query about our Q3 projections, I caught Vivian's eye across the table. The heat in her gaze made my breath catch. This was going to be harder than I thought. The days that followed were a delicious torture. Stolen kisses in empty conference rooms, lingering touches as we passed in the hallway, late nights at the office that had nothing to do with work and everything to do with mapping each other's bodies. But as exhilarating as our secret romance was, it wasn't without complications. Rumors began to circulate among the staff. I caught whispers, noticed meaningful glances exchanged when Vivian and I entered a room together. We should tell them, Vivian suggested one night as we lay tangled together in my bed. Get ahead of the gossip. Fear clenched my stomach. I'm not ready, I admitted. I'm still figuring this out myself. I can't be the poster child for corporate lesbianism right now. Vivian's laugh vibrated against my chest. Corporate lesbianism? Is that a thing? I swatted her playfully, but the knot of anxiety remained. Coming out to myself had been hard enough. The thought of coming out to the entire company, to my family, to the world, it was overwhelming. Vivian sensed my distress, pulling me closer. Hey, she murmured, pressing a kiss to my forehead. We do this at your pace, okay? No pressure. I nodded, grateful for her understanding. But as the weeks passed, the pressure only grew. Not from Vivian, but from the increasingly obvious nature of our relationship. The sidelong glances, the whispered conversations that stopped when we entered a room, it was getting harder to ignore. Everything came to a head during a crucial investor meeting. I was in the middle of my presentation when I noticed one of the older board members, Johnson, whispering to his colleague. The word dyke reached my ears, and I froze. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Panic clawed at my throat. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. And then Vivian was there, her hand on my back steadying me. I think we could all use a short break, she announced smoothly. Let's reconvene in 15 minutes. As the room emptied, Vivian guided me to a chair. Breathe, Maria, she instructed gently. In and out, that's it. When my breathing finally steadied, I looked up at her with tear-filled eyes. I can't do this, I whispered. Vivian knelt before me, taking my hands in hers. Yes, you can, she said firmly. You are strong, brilliant, and brave, and you are not alone. I'm right here with you, every step of the way. In that moment, looking into her eyes, I felt a shift. The fear was still there, but something else was growing stronger. Pride, determination, love. I took a deep breath, squeezing Vivian's hands. Okay, I said, my voice shaky but resolute. Let's do this. As we walked back into the boardroom hand in hand, I knew nothing would ever be the same. But for the first time since this wild journey began, I was ready to face whatever came next. With Vivian by my side, I could conquer anything. The fallout from our impromptu coming out was swift and severe. Within hours, my inbox was flooded with emails from board members expressing their concerns about the company's image. The thinly veiled homophobia made my blood boil, but Vivian's steady presence kept me grounded. Let them talk, she said, her voice calm but her eyes flashing with determination. We've done nothing wrong. But as the days wore on, it became clear that not everyone shared Vivian's progressive attitude. Johnson, the board member whose slur had sparked our revelation, was leading the charge against us. He called for an emergency meeting to discuss the future leadership of Technova. The night before the meeting, I paced my living room, anxiety gnawing at my insides. What if they try to oust me completely, I fretted. I've already been demoted once. This could be the final nail in my coffin. Vivian caught my hand, pulling me down onto the couch beside her. Then we fight, she said simply. Together. Her unwavering support should have been comforting, but a nagging doubt had taken root in my mind. Vivian, I began hesitantly, are you sure about this? About us? Your career could suffer too, and She silenced me with a kiss, soft but insistent. When she pulled back, her eyes were blazing. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life," she said fiercely. "I love you, Maria Sanchez, and I'm not going anywhere." It was the first time either of us had said those 3 words. They hung in the air between us, charged with promise and possibility. "I love you too," I whispered, the truth of it settling deep in my bones. We made love that night with a desperate intensity, as if trying to memorize each other's bodies in case it was our last chance. Afterward, tangled in sweat-dampened sheets, I felt a curious sense of calm settle over me. Whatever happened tomorrow, I knew I wouldn't face it alone. The boardroom was tensely silent as Johnson laid out his case against us. He spoke of moral turpitude and conflicts of interest, his thinly veiled bigotry making my skin crawl. But as I looked around the table, I saw discomfort on several faces. Not everyone was buying what he was selling. When he finished, I took a deep breath and stood. "I won't apologize for who I am," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "Nor will I apologize for falling in love. My personal life has no bearing on my ability to lead this company, and frankly, it's none of your damn business." A few gasps echoed around the room at my bluntness, but I pressed on. "What should concern you is my vision for Technova's future. A future that embraces diversity, innovation, and forward thinking. If you can't see past your own prejudices to recognize that, then maybe it's time for new leadership, but not the kind you're proposing." I laid out my plan for the company's growth, the passion in my voice growing with each point. By the time I finished, the energy in the room had shifted. Even Johnson looked cowed. In the end, the vote was close, but in our favor. I would retain my position, with the caveat that Vivian and I maintained strict professional boundaries at work. It wasn't a perfect victory, but it was a start. As we left the boardroom, hand in hand, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. But our trials were far from over. The next challenge came from an unexpected quarter, my family. My mother's tearful phone call begging me to reconsider this phase, cut deeper than any boardroom battle. My father's stony silence was even worse. "Give them time," Vivian soothed, holding me as I cried. "They love you. They'll come around." I wanted to believe her, but the rift felt insurmountable. Years of expectations and assumed futures crumbled in the face of my new reality. It was liberating and terrifying all at once. As if sensing my turmoil, Vivian suggested a weekend getaway. "Let's escape for a bit," she said. "Clear our heads, reconnect." We drove up the coast, windows down and music blaring. With the wind in my hair and Vivian's hand on my thigh, I felt the weight of the past weeks begin to lift. Our beachfront bungalow was a slice of paradise. We spent our days lounging on the sand, swimming in crystal-clear waters, and making love with abandon. For the first time since our relationship began, we were truly alone. No work, no family, no societal expectations. Just us. On our last night, as we watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues, Vivian grew uncharacteristically quiet. "Penny for your thoughts?" I prompted, echoing her words from weeks ago. She turned to me, her expression serious. "I need to tell you something," she said softly, "about my past." My heart clenched. What could be so serious? As Vivian began to speak, her words painting a picture of childhood trauma and hard-won healing, I felt a mix of emotions wash over me. Anger at those who had hurt her, awe at her resilience, and an overwhelming surge of love and protectiveness. When she finished, tears glistening in her eyes, I pulled her close. "Thank you for trusting me with this," I murmured into her hair. "It doesn't change how I feel about you. If anything, it makes me love you more." Vivian's relieved sob was muffled against my chest. We held each other as the last rays of sunlight faded, our bond deepened by this new layer of intimacy. The drive back to Honolulu was subdued, both of us lost in thought. As the city skyline came into view, reality began to creep back in. Work awaited us, along with all the challenges we'd temporarily escaped. But something had shifted during our time away. The fears and doubts that had plagued me seemed smaller somehow, less insurmountable. I glanced at Vivian, her profile gilded by the setting sun, and felt a surge of determination. We'd faced down bigoted board members and family disappointment. We'd shared our deepest secrets and fears. Whatever came next, we would face it together. As we pulled into my driveway, Vivian turned to me with a soft smile. "Ready?" she asked, the question encompassing far more than just exiting the car. I leaned in, pressing a tender kiss to her lips. "With you?" I replied, Always. Hand in hand, we walked toward my front door, ready to face whatever the future held. The road ahead might be bumpy, but with Vivian by my side, I knew we could weather any storm. The months following our beachside getaway were a whirlwind of challenges and triumphs. Vivian and I threw ourselves into our work, determined to prove that our relationship wouldn't hinder Technova's success. If anything, our synergy seemed to fuel innovation. Our latest AI project was garnering buzz in the tech world, and investor interest was at an all-time high. But success came at a price. Late nights at the office, working weekends, stolen moments of intimacy in between meetings, it all began to take its toll. The honeymoon phase of our relationship gave way to the realities of balancing love and ambition. "We need a vacation," Vivian declared one night, as we pored over financial projections in my living room. A real one this time. No laptops, no phones. I scoffed, gesturing at the papers strewn around us. "In the middle of all this? Are you crazy?" Vivian's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Maybe a little, but that's why you love me, right?" I couldn't argue with that logic. 2 weeks later, we found ourselves on a secluded beach in Bali, a world away from boardrooms and balance sheets. As I watched Vivian emerge from the crystal-clear water, droplets glistening on her bronzed skin, I felt a familiar tug in my chest. How had I gotten so lucky? "You're staring," she teased, plopping down beside me on the sand. I grinned, unabashed. "Can you blame me?" Vivian leaned in, her lips brushing my ear. "Save it for tonight," she murmured, her voice thick with promise. That night, as we made love under a canopy of stars, I felt something shift, a sense of rightness, of coming home. As we lay tangled together afterward, I knew with sudden clarity what I needed to do. "Marry me," I blurted out. Vivian's eyes widened in surprise. "What?" I sat up, suddenly nervous but sure. "Marry me," I repeated. "I know it's fast, and maybe I'm crazy, but I love you, Vivian Chen. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." For a heart-stopping moment, Vivian was silent, then slowly a smile spread across her face. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times yes. We returned to Honolulu floating on cloud 9, matching rings glinting on our fingers. But our bubble of bliss was quickly burst by the realities awaiting us. The board was in an uproar over our engagement, citing concerns about the company's image and potential conflicts of interest. Johnson, ever the thorn in our side, was leading the charge to have one of us removed from our positions. "It's me or you," I said grimly, after a particularly brutal meeting. "One of us has to step down." Vivian's jaw clenched. "Like hell," she growled. "We've worked too hard to let them win now." We spent nights strategizing, days politicking. It was exhausting, but we were determined to fight for our love and our careers. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Thomas, the board chairman who had demoted me months ago, called us into his office. "I owe you both an apology," he began, looking uncomfortable but sincere. "I let my personal biases cloud my judgment. Your work these past months has been exemplary, and your relationship, well, it's clear it's only made you stronger." He laid out a proposal, a restructuring of the company that would allow us both to retain leadership positions while addressing the board's concerns about conflicts of interest. It wasn't perfect, but it was a lifeline. As we left Thomas's office, hope blossoming in my chest, my phone buzzed. My mother's name flashed on the screen. With a deep breath, I answered. "Maria," she began, her voice thick with emotion. We've been doing a lot of thinking. Your father and I, we want to meet Vivian. Properly this time." Tears pricked my eyes as relief washed over me. It wasn't full acceptance, not yet, but it was a start. The day of our wedding dawned bright and clear. As I stood at the altar, watching Vivian glide down the aisle, I marveled at how far we'd come. My parents sat in the front row, my mother dabbing at her eyes. Vivian's family beamed with pride. Even a few board members had shown up, Johnson conspicuously absent. "I, Maria Sanchez, take you, Vivian Chen, to be my lawfully wedded wife," I began, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill over. "To have and to hold, in boardrooms and bedrooms, through IPOs and IVF." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd at my unconventional vows. Vivian grinned, squeezing my hands. "I promise to love you fiercely, support you unconditionally, and challenge you relentlessly," I continued. "To be your partner in all things, personal and professional. To build a life, a family, and a legacy together." As we sealed our vows with a kiss, cheers erupting around us, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. We still had battles to fight, prejudices to overcome. But together, we were unstoppable. At the reception, as we swayed together for our first dance, Vivian leaned in close. "So, Mrs. Sanchez-Chen," she murmured, "ready for our next adventure?" I pulled back slightly, searching her face. There was a glint in her eye that I recognized, the same look she got before pitching a particularly daring business strategy. "What did you do?" I asked, half excited, half terrified. Vivian's grin widened. "Remember that AI project we've been working on? Well, I may have mentioned it to a certain tech mogul who happened to be vacationing in Bali." My jaw dropped. "You didn't." "I did," she confirmed. "And let's just say, Technova might be going global sooner than we thought." As Vivian outlined the potential deal, my mind raced with possibilities. It was risky, ambitious, and absolutely terrifying. In other words, perfectly us. "You're incredible," I breathed, pulling her in for a kiss that probably wasn't entirely appropriate for a first dance. When we broke apart, breathless and giddy, I saw our future stretching out before us, bright, challenging, and full of promise. There would be hard times ahead, no doubt. But with Vivian by my side, I was ready for anything. "So," I said, echoing her words from months ago, "ready for our next chapter?" Vivian's answering smile was radiant. "With you? Always." As we twirled across the dance floor, lost in our own world, I silently thanked whatever twist of fate had brought us together. From chance encounters at dog parks to boardroom battles and beachside proposals, our journey had been anything but conventional. But then again, neither were we. And as the night wore on, filled with laughter, love, and promises of adventures to come, I knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning.